All right, welcome to part 7 of the sci-fi case here. So in between tutorials, I've decided to add these cool Boolean sort of details. And if we turn off the wireframe on shaded, you can kind of see what it looks like. And it's, again, referenced from the Photoshop file here, basically this detail here. Like little notch areas that kind of push in or out with different sort of designs. Very popular with a lot of sci-fi and military kind of imagery is the use of a triangle. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to do some triangles going across. And the way I did this was with a Boolean method. Boolean is very, very cool. And as long as you don't delete the history, it's still active. So if I go into my channel box and click on Attribute Editor and find the Boolean, here it is. And so for this particular thing, it's still active. So whether I select these triangles here or the mesh here, and you can do different operations, which is really nice. So you can click in here and change how its appearance, which is the shaded or wireframe. But here's the actual operation. So I could unify this. So what that does is unifies the two pieces of geometry and makes it one whole mesh. And you can see the triangle actually extends out there. From the side view here. Difference, you can see basically subtracts one from the other. And you might think that might be a good methodology for this, but I wanted more control over what did I want to do with the Boolean, and that's why I did not use that particular option. But that is one that's good, and basically have two different differences here. So basically flips the two images. Then you have the intersection, which is the area between the two meshes, and you can see that sort of there. Then you have the slice, and the slice, the way it works basically is showing sort of the outline of it, but also giving you a piece of it in the back. Hole punch, basically just like it sounds, cut away the hole completely. And then we have the cutout, which leaves little cutout pieces. And then the final one is split edges, and that's the one I chose to use, because that leaves the outline of the geometry for me to basically add my own sort of edge flow in terms of direction instead of just relying directly on the Boolean method. So you can see here I've created edge loops that kind of, supporting loops that kind of support the geometry. So let's go ahead and figure out how to do this. So we're going to select this piece of geometry here. And the first thing we're going to need is the sort of triangle shape, and basically I just use a cube. So I'm going to go to my poly modeling shelf here and click on the cube, and you can see it there, and I'm going to hit W and just kind of move into position, and then I'm just going to scale it. So I'm going to go into component mode here, vertex, grab the top verts and just scale them in so I get like a triangular shape, essentially. Something like that should work okay. And then go back into object mode by right clicking and then just scale it down quite a bit. Now to get it to perfectly align with these lines, I'll kind of show you a little trick here to do that. Just kind of move them close into position, get it kind of close once we get it there. So what I'm looking at is between this edge and this edge is where I want this to be aligned, essentially. So what you can do is select your object and go into vertex mode, select all these verts, and I can move them up and down. I could kind of eyeball it, but what's really nice, remember that trick, I can hold the V key and sort of snap to that edge and or that vert on the end there. And I can do the same thing here, just drag across these, move it up or down, and then I'll hold the V and middle mouse click on that point there. And now I've essentially aligned them back, both basically that direction. Now I could, basically at this point kind of scale this in. So scale from the sides to make it a little bit thinner because I do want to have 3 of them. It's important not to scale up or down but I could go a little thinner in terms of the thickness here. So I could just bring that in and something like that should work okay. Go back to object mode. And now all I gotta do is duplicate a few of these, and I think I did 3 on the other one. So one trick is you can do Control D to duplicate, but if you want to duplicate in a line, there's a cool hotkey. It's Shift D which basically gives you a duplicate copy. And then it remembers the spacing in between exactly, which is really cool. So I can kind of move this back and forth. And then once I'm done, hit Shift D again, and I get an exact duplicate with a distance. Now I'm going to select all three of these just by holding the Shift key, and I have them all, and then I'm just going to combine them. So my custom shelf, I have the combine tool here, but again, that's under, I believe it's Edit Mesh, or is it Mesh Tools? Mesh, here it is, it's combine right there. So now this is one whole object, which I can move as one whole unit, right? So now I just kind of move it into place wherever I want. That looks pretty good. And the way you can select it to do the Boolean is you select that piece of geometry you want to select first, then hold the Shift key and select the Boolean object, and go to Mesh, and then choose Booleans, and then choose Union to start with. But again, with my option, I'm going to click in here and go down to Split Edges so that I get this effect here. Now, to complete this, all I gotta do is make a copy of it by hitting Control D, and now I have a perfect copy. So I can always keep this just as if I want to change things. What's really nice is this is fully interactive Boolean. So say I select all these edges on these little triangles here, and I, for example, do a bevel. It'll actually update. You can see that on here on the lines, which is crazy. So the Boolean method is pretty powerful. You can definitely try out lots of different things. So I could add like a bunch of segments here, and then if I right click, go to object mode, and I'll go ahead and duplicate this again and pull this out, you'll see that with this object I have created this round edge here with these verts. So each of these verts are essentially here. I don't want rounded edges, I actually want triangular sort of sharp, so I'm going to stick with this one. So the next thing we're going to do here is we're basically going to extrude these in the faces, and then we're going to extrude inwards, inwards, and inwards, and then cap it off, and I'll kind of show you how to do that. Then I would add edge loops that connect on the top and bottom, and that would kind of finish it off. So I'm going to go to face mode, select these two faces, these two, and these two. And again, I'm just holding the Shift key to do that. And then I'm going to hit Control E for extrude. And again, with this first one, I'm just going to click on the blue cube, one click, and the blue cube in the center, and left click and drag. And what that does is it creates an edge loop around. And these supporting edges will kind of help hold this form. So it's actually really important when you do any kind of hole punches to kind of have a supporting edge this way. It just works out really well. So now I can hit Control E again, and then grab the blue arrow and drag in a little bit. And again, I'm just trying to save time. I could do insert edge loop in here, but I'm going to do it this way just by hitting Control E again and drag the blue arrow even more to about that thickness, say, and then Control E one more time to get one edge loop there. Now the final thing I'm going to do is one more extrusion. So I've done 3 so far to get down here with these supporting edge loops. But now I want to do one where I get another edge loop around this whole shape here. So again, just hit Control E and then click once on that blue cube and once on the center cube and drag to the left. And that will kind of scale in a supporting edge on that flat surface there. So you can see that there. So I'm going to right click, go to object mode, and now when I hit number 3, you can see it has kind of that shape. Now the reason why these are all flipping all over the place, the edges, they look kind of crummy, is because they're broken. There's no continuation all the way up. So I need to add edge loops going up and down. And if you think about these points here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we got 6 at the bottom too. So that's how many edge loops we need. So a great tool for adding multiple edge loops is the Insert Edge Loop tool. So I'm just going to double click on the tool to open up the options, and there's a multiple edge loops, and I already set it to 6, but you can just basically drag this little slider here to where you want, and then you just click once, and that added 6 edge loops there. Now they might not be lined up correctly, but at least you got them there. And then once there. Now I'm going to just change this back to relative distance and then close that out. And then click on my arrow tool to kind of escape out. Now, these actually look pretty good. They're not horribly spaced. I could keep them where they're at. In fact, I think I am. But if you did want to move them, you could double click, hold the shift key, double click, and then you could use a scale tool in the X direction, right? If I wanted to scale these in or move them however I want. But I think with this, I can basically use my handy multi-cut tool and basically just click and connect these. So again, remember, left click, and then right click. So left click on that point, left click here, and then right click. And so I'm just going to go through here and left click, right click, left click, right click, and then one more, left, right, left, right. And I just have to do the bottoms here. So the bottoms, I might want to spread these out a little bit. I'm just looking at the way these will kind of come down. I kind of want to pull them apart more. So actually I'm going to double click, hold the shift key, double click, and then I'm just going to scale these out a little bit more to kind of match closer to where those edges are. And then double click, hold the shift key, double click, and kind of scale those out. Again, they don't have to be exact, but if you did want to line up exact, you know, you can always use the V key with the middle mouse to kind of line up perfectly. This will be close enough. And then again, switch back to the multi-cut tool and click, left click there, right click, and then left click and right click, left click. Now I'm going to purposely not line up exactly in that point because I want to show you something here when it comes to smoothing on that one. Left click, right click, and left click, right click. So when I hit number 3 here, you'll see that this bends out in a weird way. And so you know that things aren't lined up correctly. So anytime you do this kind of repetitive verts where you have alignments just right, if you notice something off like that, you can see here we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 faces here. And so what that means is these two are not lined up properly. So again, what I can do is switch to my weld tool here and click on and make sure I'm in vertex mode and select this vert and then left click to drag it to that point there. Now when I hit number 3, everything lines up good once I click out and go to object mode here. So now to get this a little bit more geometry across, a little square kind of feel, I'm going to add an edge loop at the top and the bottom using the insert edge loop tool. So I'm just going to click and drag right here and kind of bring it kind of tight, and then one here and bring it down kind of tight, and that should do it. That should look pretty good there. Go to object mode, hit number 3, and that looks pretty good on the inside there. Now the way to really tell is to turn off wireframe unshaded, and then you can see. Now the only thing is there's not much distance between here and the rollout of the edge, so I might want to add an extra edge loop there. I could have done that and kind of brought that up. It's something that you could definitely change and adjust and modify a little bit. Probably would have been better to have that, but it's okay. It's not horrible if I click off. I just kind of see a little bit of bending there, and it's kind of something that annoys me. So I think what I'll do here is, let's see, to fix this, I'm going to grab all these verts. I'm going to go into vertex mode and drag over this whole loop here. And I'm just going to, actually, I don't even do that. I'm just going to double click on the insert edge loop tool, add an edge loop right here, bring it up. And then what I need to do is bring it out to match this guy here. So if I hit W and kind of pull out, I need it to match this guy. So if I can hit the V key and just kind of snap. Okay, doesn't look like it's working there. Sometimes this happens with, oh, I see what happened. It's because I have this part of the edge selected. So I need to just select from here. Let me undo a couple times to bring it back. There we go. So I have the entire edge loop still selected. I need to just select the front of these from there to there. There we go. And then now when I move it out and hold the V key, it should snap to that. There we go. And you can see it's pretty straight now along there. So when I hit 3 now we have a little bit of supporting edge loop at the bottom when I click off. And it's a little bit better down there, I think. Now, on the edge here, we got to add, I added a couple of edge loops on this inside here, but I need to add one here, along here, to make this look a little bit not so rubbery. You know, right now it's looking very kind of rubbery. So I'm going to add a few edge loops like right in here. And I don't know what I'm going to do with this piece of detail yet, but I'm just kind of thinking here. I also want to add an edge loop at the back here to kind of make sure that stays flush. And then right now, if I leave it, this kind of rounds off. I could have like one side where I bring it in, and then the other side kind of rounded. So you could do something, a split in between, and that's not always a bad idea. So everything doesn't have to be super crisp, and you know, you can have some areas around this. Just understand it's about the distance between the two edges that creates the curve. So the closer you have them together, the sharper the edge will be. When I click off there, I mean, that looks pretty decent. I think that looks okay where it's at there. So now I would just have to bring that in. Oh, one other thing, I just realized there's no edge loop along this whole side. So let me add one there. So you can see as soon as I bring that in, it does a huge difference in terms of that side structure really holding that edge. You can see how much firmer it is along there. So now I just got to move this guy into position back to where it was. Now, luckily I have the transform right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two pieces and just move them out of the way for a sec. And you'll sometimes see this ghost kind of thing with the Boolean. And what it is there's the original, and then there's the Boolean, and then the mix. So I'm going to undo that. Actually, I'm going to drag like that, so I make sure I get all three. There we go. Now once you move them, you're getting double transformations. It's okay. I could even delete that really, but I'll leave it for right now. So now to bring this back, all I gotta do is zero this out, and now we have these two pieces coming together. Now there's a little bit of a gap there in between. I'm noticing if I zoom in here, anytime you have a gap there, all you gotta do is extend that edge. So I'm gonna isolate that for a sec and hit number 1. And so what I can do is go to edge mode and just select these edges here, or actually just click on this one and then double click, so I select that whole edge line and just kind of pull it over, you know, extend it out a little bit. I can also do that on the top one here. I can kind of go around, and actually that goes all around to here. So I will hold the shift key and double click, and that creates that whole edge loop, and bring it down kind of like that, just to give a little bit more thickness. In fact, let me add one more supporting edge loop in there, close to the, oh, that's right, I have a triangle there, so it breaks it. So I'm going to undo that. I would have to redraw it along there. It'll be okay when I click out here and smooth it and bring back the other item. Yeah, now that hole has kind of gone away, so it works out okay. So you'll find that you'll have to do that for each object. You'll have to like look at it and kind of observe, and do you have to rearrange it, move it around, whatever. At this point, these two pieces are pretty much ready to be duplicated, unless I want to add more detail. I might want to do some more stuff to this guy, and maybe a few more. Oh, there's a notch thing I want to kind of do to this guy, I remember. So let me do that real quick. I'm going to go to 1, and I'm going to add an edge loop across here, and maybe one right here. And then I'm going to grab these faces. So I'm going to select this one, this one, this one. And then on the other side, I'll hit number 4 here. 4 goes into wireframe mode, and sometimes it's just easier to select things. So I'm going to select these edges along here. So I just wanted that whole bit there. And then I'm going to hit Control E, and I'm just going to adjust the thickness. So Essentially, I want to make it, bring it down a little bit. So I'm going to hit negative, I'll put 0.002 maybe. We'll try that. And that looks pretty good. I think I tried that number before. It looked pretty good. By the way, if you see this happening, where you get so close the camera starts to disappear, that's the clipping angle, and that's in your outliner. If you go to your perspective camera here, it is, let's see, where is it here? I always forget where this is at. It's in the attribute editor. Yeah, it's in the attribute editor. Here we go. So near clip plane. So I set the far clip plane to a high number. It's like 10,000, but I could even add an extra 0 there if I want. But if I want this near clip plane, I could put, instead of 0.1, I could put 0.01, and that should fix the issue so that when I zoom in, it doesn't, it starts to go away eventually. I could add a couple more zeros, and then, yeah, it's starting to come away a little bit. But yeah, that's the clipping angle, the near versus the far. So eventually it starts to clip away there. Is it the higher number? Maybe it is a higher number. Let me put 1 and go in. No. Let's see, negative. Nope, can't do negative. Let's do 0.0000 and then 1. Let's try a really low number. I guess there's a max and a minimum. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. If you guys shoot me on YouTube a little message, maybe if I figure that out. I forget what it is about the clipping plane, but that's how you adjust it basically. It's just the near plane, and I'm wondering if it's in the shape node of the perspective camera. Am I in the perspective camera? I'm on my switch cam camera. That's why it's not doing it. So my switch cam camera is another camera I had set up, and here it is. Here's the near clip. Let me change that to 0.0001. There we go. And now if I zoom in, it fixed it. So I had the correct thing, I just had the wrong camera. You have to notice that it's down here at the bottom is the actual camera you have selected. So now you can see no clipping is happening there. Cool. So finally, what I might do in here is add, I don't know, a couple edge loops. Let's add one here and here, just to kind of hold this. I'm going to add one up against the edge here, and then one here. And then on the inside here, right now if I hit number 3, you can see it kind of loses its form here. So if I add one on the inside, one here and one here, it'll kind of hold that notch pretty good. So I'm going to click out, right click, go to object mode, and now hit number 3. And let's turn off wireframe on shade. Take a look at that. See, it's got a cool little notch now. I kind of like the idea of having, just to interrupt any kind of detail where you don't have to have like a long line. You can interrupt it with something as simple as like, let's take out a notch here. Now we're getting a little bit of pinching here, and that's because of how close I have these edge loops. That one came out really close. I could definitely bring that one back a little bit. So just double click on it, hit W, and kind of pull it back. I don't have to have it quite so close. And the other thing, if I add some additional edge loops in here, another thing that can happen is if you don't have other loops to kind of average it out, it kind of sometimes will do more distortion than necessary. So let me go back to object mode and hit number 3. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's much better. Less pinching there. This one's got a little bit more, so again, I would just bring that edge loop out, or actually, I did bring that one out pretty good. Could be the interior one, maybe. I don't know. I'll have to look at that. Let's see. If we look at it, hit 3. So it's this right in here. It's in the corner that's causing it. I have this interior edge loop. Maybe I don't need that one. Let me double click on it, and then hit Control Backspace or Delete and see how that seems to help the pitching a little bit. So I don't know. The other thing you could do is sort of pull out this corner and give it a little bit more room there. I might have to work on that in the next tutorial, and we'll see. But for right now, I think this is a good stopping point. Click off for a sec. I mean, from a distance there, it looks pretty good. Just when you zoom in, there's a little bit of distortion there, a little bit of that aberration, which we can fix on there. And so it's just too much pinching right across there. Oh, I know what it is. It's because we don't have a supporting edge loop down here. That's right. So I didn't add one right here, right? On the outside boundary. I forgot to add that on there. So now that goes all the way around. So now if we go to object mode and hit number 3, much better. See, no more pinching. Haha, got it resolved. Yeah, usually it's just a matter of a single edge loop when it happens, and it's kind of wacky. The other thing you got to be careful of is at one point I had too many edge loops in here, and you got to make sure they're evenly displaced. Otherwise, if they're too tight together, like these are getting kind of tight, when I click off there, you might see a slight distortion or a bend or a fold in there. And if that happens, you'll really notice it. I can actually add some edge loops here, and you would see it right away. I'll add one there, and one there, and click off, and I just undo that. But let me go back to object mode. You can start to see on that one, you don't notice it really. But sometimes it depends on where it's at. I'll just undo those. I don't need those extra edge loops. That one didn't do it, but if you have it too squished together, I had it over here on this side, and it basically caused some issues. Maybe I'll just do one over here. And let's see, I'll bring it really close. I think that'll do it. Hit 3. Yeah, here we go. So you can see that shadow, there's a little bit of aberration there. And that's because of that extra edge loop that I added there that is unnecessary. So I'm just going to undo and get rid of that guy. You can just hit Control-Z a couple times. So edge loop, edge flow are very, very critical to modeling. So it's always a good idea to uncheck the wireframe on shade every once in a while and see how things are. But if you have your lines sort of evenly spaced, you're going to have better results overall, especially when it comes to texturing. All right, we'll call it. Until next time, see you soon. Cheers.